In 1703, Hannah Twynnoy became Britain's first recorded victim of a tiger, according to her tombstone. The inscription on the stone reads, "In bloom of life she snatched from hence, she had no room to make defence, for tiger fierce took life away, and here she lies in a bed of clay, until the resurrection day." So what did actually happen to Hannah? Now, the story has been passed down from generation to generation, and the unusual fact is that the story has actually remained consistent. A historian, John Bowen, had found a plaque on the wall of the parish church in Hulverston, a village 5 miles away from where her tombstone was in Malmesbury. On the plaque is a story relating to Hannah. The plaque appears to have been installed soon after her death, in the first year of the 18th century, and it is thought to have been placed there as maybe that was where she originated from. The legend or the story to this day matches the story on the plaque and on her tombstone. Now, the plaque was recorded in the Victorian period by a local historian but has since disappeared. It may have been sold, melted down or even stolen, but he did actually document what was written on it. Poetic epitaphs on gravestones were popular at the turn of the 18th century, but generally only for the wealthy and celebrated. A gravestone and a plot in the churchyard of Malmesbury Abbey for any woman who could not have been the priest or a priest's wife would have been costly, even without engaging the services of a poet. The identity of the patron who paid for her tombstone and plot remains a mystery, although they may have been donated by the church and the vestry. An inscription on a grave in Winchester honours a 26-year-old grenadier who served in the Hants Militar North Regiment. His name was Thomas Thatcher. His tombstone tells us he died after drinking contaminated small, or weak, beer when he was hot. It reads, "Here sleeps in peace a Hampshire grenadier, who caught his death by drinking cold small beer. Soldiers, be wise from his untimely fall, and when ye hot drink, strong or none at all." Thomas Thatcher was a much respected soldier. In honour of his untimely demise, his fellow soldiers commissioned a gravestone to honour him. In addition to his untimely death, his death was very bizarre, because the soldier wasn't killed by a sword, or a gun, or a cannon, but it was said that he died from drinking beer. Before the invention of modern sanitisation, people would drink small beer when fresh water was unavailable. In the 1700s, beer was likely safer than water. After all, boiling the wort kills most bacteria, hops have some antibacterial properties, and fermentation drops the pH to a level where most bacteria can't survive. However, this was not enough to prevent Thatcher from catching a fever and dying. It is thought that because he drank small, or weak beer, there was not enough antibacterial properties in it. But if that was the case, why is it not true of everyone who drank small beer? And why was the hot day mentioned? Many theories suggest that it wasn't the beer that killed him, but the warm weather in the wooden casks. There was not enough alcohol in the beer to kill mould, which began growing in the woods of the casks. Another theory is the way the beer was poured. Beer engines, invented in the late 1600s, were notoriously hard to clean. Dirty pipes accumulate yeast, bacteria and moulds that would not be killed by a low alcohol content. Even today you can still get foodborne illnesses from dirty beer pipes, so it's very possible this was the cause of illness, especially in the warmer weather. It could have just been that Thatcher had already got an illness and his comrades attributed his death to beer. Illnesses were not studied or well known back then, so most people attributed illness to whatever happened just before they fell ill. In 1918, the tombstone caught the attention of a young American soldier called Bill Wilson, who was camped nearby with his US Army unit. Bill was in Winchester visiting the cathedral and came across Thomas Thatcher's grave. Wilson was deeply affected by the inscription that even years after returning from the war, he says it may have saved his life. Despite Wilson's success as a businessman after returning home, his life soon spiralled out of control by heavy drinking. His drinking was so harmful to his health, it is believed that the only way to save his life was to lock him up. Wilson and a fellow group of alcoholics overcame all odds in order to achieve and maintain sobriety. Eventually he wrote a world-renowned book about his experiences called Alcoholics Anonymous. Wilson was one of the founding members of Alcoholics Anonymous. However, it appears he may have misunderstood the headstone. The warning was not about drinking or drinking anything. It was about drinking weak beer. Strong beer was thought to be fine. On the 12th of May, the anniversary of Thatcher's death, people gather at the grave to drink strong beer and raise a glass to the Grenadier. Many of the characters on the film Titanic were modelled on real-life people. Captain Edward John Smith was a British naval officer. He served as a master of numerous White Star Line vessels. He was the captain of the RMS Titanic and perished when the ship sank on her maiden voyage. Margaret Molly Brown, posthumously known as the unsinkable Molly Brown, was an American socialite and philanthropist. In the movie, she was seen unsuccessfully encouraging the crew of lifeboat number 6 to return to the debris field of the 1912 sinking of the Titanic to look for survivors. She was actually really in lifeboat 6 and really did try to convince the boats to return. Thomas Andrews was a British businessman and shipbuilder. He was the naval architect in charge of the plans for the ocean liner Titanic, and he perished along with more than 1,500 others when the ship sank during her maiden voyage. But who is this Jack Dawson who died on the Titanic? Jack Dawson and Rose DeWitt Bucata, portrayed in the movie by Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, are almost entirely fictional characters. So Rose was modelled on an American artist, Beatrice Wood, who had no connection to Titanic's history, but a man who signed his name Jack Dawson did board the Titanic. However, the J stood for Joseph and not Jack. So Joseph Dawson was born in Dublin and he was a member of the Titanic crew. It was his job to even out the piles of coal that were shovelled into the ship's furnaces. The producer of the film, Titanic, reported that he was not aware of Joseph Dawson until after finishing his Titanic screenplay. Still, love-struck fans of the 1997 movie ventured to Jack Dawson's grave in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where they left cinema stubs, personal photos and pictures of Leonardo DiCaprio. Another coincidental character created by James Cameron, the producer, was Jack's Irish friend, Tommy Ryan. The ship's manifest lists a Thomas Ryan who was a 27-year-old steward from third class, whose body, if recovered, was never identified. Now this grave belongs to Richard Smith, who was killed at the age of 20 in 1727. Even though his headstone might appear innocuous enough, the events leading up to his death serve as a sobering warning to young men who like to play around when they should be paying attention. So, the story goes that in 1727, a recruitment sergeant from the army came to Hinckley and praised the king's shilling. While the recruiter was talking, Richard was making jokes and quips and made him lose his temper. During an unplanned demonstration, the sergeant gave the crowd a lesson in how to use a pike in close quarters combat and killed Richard. Since then, it is reported that Richard's spirit is not happy about his untimely death. It has been reported that the headstone appears red, and traditions hold that it sweats blood every year on the anniversary of the murder. However fun that is, a researcher in 1936 offered a more practical explanation for the phenomenon. It was thought that the sweating may have resulted in water dripping from a block of red sandstone over the gravestone.